Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with the story of a peaceful village in the south of France where one farmer's patience finally paid off after years of mystery. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Neighbor yelled at me because I harvested my fruits before she could steal them. Living in a quiet rural village in the south of France, I take pride in my work as a farmer. My land is expansive, and there's a section near the neighborhood road where I have plum trees, beautiful Mirabelle plums that are highly coveted around here, especially for making jam. Every year I wait patiently for them to ripen, but every year I notice that a sizable portion of the fruit mysteriously disappears. I always suspected that someone from the neighborhood was helping themselves to my plums, but I could never figure out who it was until this morning. It was early, around 7 a.m., and I decided to start harvesting while the air was still cool, avoiding the heat wave we're currently experiencing. I'd nearly finished gathering the plums when I saw her, a neighbor, walking down the road toward me, basket in hand. As soon as she saw me and realized that I had already harvested most of the plums, she had the audacity to yell at me, "That's so selfish of you. You're not the only one who likes these plums, you know. You could have at least left some for the rest of us." I couldn't believe it. Here she was, standing on my land, complaining about my harvest on trees that I had planted and cared for. I own the land. I'm a farmer, and she knows this. But still, she had the nerve to act like I was the one in the wrong. I calmly reminded her that I was making jam with the plums and suggested she visit the local farmer's market if she wanted to buy a jar or two. But I wasn't about to let her off the hook completely. I told her flat out that now I knew she was the one stealing the plums, and if they mysteriously vanished again next year, I'd be pressing charges for theft and trespassing. Her face went pale and she quickly turned around, basket still empty. Finally, I had my answer. And she knew she wouldn't be getting away with it again. I guess her attitude is what's yours should be shared, but what's hers is hers alone. And our second story. Our sandwich making skills aren't fresh enough? Well, we won't be serving bologna at this location anymore, ma'am. This is a story about the little things in life, pettiness, sandwiches, and the price of being a crap person. I worked at a big, at the time, chain sandwich shop about a decade ago. I was a young, fresh-faced teen, about as intimidating as a free pamphlet getting knocked around an empty parking lot by the wind. That would soon change. There's me, 17 years old, cool guy manager, male, 29 years old, lazy owner's wife, OW, 40s, and crappy customer, let's call her thin-lipped, TL, mid-30s, because she always made that pursed lip face. I just started working at the store, getting used to the job and regulars. About the same time, TL started to make herself known. She starts off being huffy and rude, but we just laugh it off as her being a mid-30s, upper-middle-class entitled white lady. This is fine, we get them all the time, and M plays Dawn of Ashes over the speakers sometimes, so it's gonna happen. She told us one day she came to our store because it was close and her young twins and husband loved it, but continued to be rude. Still, totally whatever. Then she starts to get mad and become a nuisance. Her twins need the exact same thing. What do you mean you only have one small cookie left? I said I needed two, or we had to remake food because she didn't like the way it looked, or she decided she did want lettuce after all. We keep her happy because OW doesn't tolerate unhappy customers and will drive her Mercedes SUV to the store and chew us out. After a few months, TL thinks she deserves extra special treatment because she's there 3 times a week, and now we cannot do anything right in her eyes. She even refuses to let M make her food because she doesn't like him and wants it done by someone else. Finally, one shift she comes in when I'm acting manager. All that means is I turned down assistant manager because of twice the responsibility and a 15-cent raise. But they still gave me most of the management power. And after TL demanded we pull fresh food from the back and telling other people in line how awful the service always is here, she gives me a hard time on the price. I had to substitute things on her order to keep her happy, and it came out to be less than her normal charge, which she didn't realize till 5 minutes of me trying to show her, then asked to see the manager. It's my time to shine. Keeping myself from grinning, hunching over, and villain-style cackling, I tell her that I am the manager on duty, and if she has any issues, she can take it up with me. She argues. I confirm I'm the acting manager. She glares and leaves. M thinks it's hilarious, and OW's just glad she didn't have to come in and do anything. I feel smug because I pissed her off without breaking any rules. We aren't even close to being done. For some brevity here are the bullet points of what she does over the next few weeks. Makes female coworker cry because TL berates her. Complains even more, e.g., this can of soda doesn't taste the same as from store X. Talks down to M on her order total because he isn't quick at math and says she wants OP to come do it. By the way, she was wrong. Brings her kids in, yells what she wants while chasing them around and holding up the line. Tells us how hard she has it with twins, a wealthy husband, and having to come pick up food for dinner. Often will not respond to questions and just stare at you, wide-eyed, tight-lipped, and furious. Sorry, I asked you if you wanted a drink. Threatens to call the health department. Calls the health department, which gets us in trouble with OW, not because we were being unsanitary, M was strict about cleanliness, but because OW had to buy more cleaning products and replace old sinks. And she still came to our store. I was on my last legs with this job. We had to do something. OW would just comp TL's meal instead of ever disrespect the customer. This was even worse because OW was rarely there and TL liked getting free food, but only OW was allowed to comp meals. The perfect opportunity came after a few more visits from TL. OW and her husband are Indian, which only matters to contextualize the contempt they showed for people below them, and because, oddly enough, they seem to hate other brown-skinned people. I don't understand it, but it's been explained to me by Indian friends as a thing. So one day, we decide M will report to OW every time TL came in to build a case against her. OW doesn't trust M, Mexican, so she asks me, white, to confirm his story. And while most of the stories are true, we stretch it a bit. Instead of "this store is run so poorly," it became "whoever owns this place does a terrible job and should be ashamed." It worked like a charm. OW was extremely offended and started to come in around TL's normal time to see for herself. OW stepped in one day as she heard TL going off and to help defuse the situation, but OW didn't know what she was doing and did an awful job making TL's, at this point, very complicated order. By the time they made it to the register, they were in a shouting match. All the anger of being, insulted by TL seemed to fuel OW's rage and finally told her to never come back to the store again. TL said she would take her business to the further store and that we were awful, but of course TL called and demanded to talk to the owner, and they met at the store and she complained about his wife, OW, the store, how her family loved the food, and now she had to drive an extra 7 minutes to the next store. She let it slip that she'd been demanding and getting discounts on her meals because of our poor service, which pissed him off, and they had another shouting match in which she got banned from 3 more stores he owned. The real petty part was how much we had to do to make her suffer just a little bit. All in all, she had to drive an extra 14 minutes 3 times a week and pay full price at a store that was warned to give her no special treatment. Thanks for reading the whole damn thing. I wish more owners and managers would stop and listen to their employees when this type of thing is going on. As an employee in the service industry, you should never have to be berated by a customer for doing your job because the customer's having a bad day or rude, etc. And our last story. Neighbor has a shed that's apparently on my parents' property. Years ago, when I was still a kid, our neighbor built a shed that always seemed a little too close to our family's home. At the time, I didn't think much of it, just a shed standing where sheds often go, in the backyard. But recently, I visited my parents and really noticed how close that shed actually was. It didn't sit right with me, so being curious, I decided to do some digging. I went onto the county website to check if there was any official documentation regarding our property lines. At first, all I could find were generic lot maps, nothing groundbreaking, but then I stumbled upon something called GIS and ImageMate. This was the jackpot, a property-specific layout of my parents' house. To my surprise, it showed not only my parents' home, but 2 sheds. Now, we don't have 2 sheds. That's when it clicked. The second shed on the map was actually the neighbor's, but it was marked as being on our land. To be sure, I decided to pull up the neighbor's property survey map, and sure enough, their property layout had no mention of the shed. This all but confirmed my suspicion that the neighbor's shed had been built on my parents' land. I couldn't believe it had gone unnoticed for years. I thought we could settle this with a simple conversation. After all, a mistake is a mistake, right? So we went over to the neighbors, trying to have a calm, rational discussion about the shed situation, but the response we got was anything but friendly. Before we could even finish explaining, the neighbors cut us off, saying, "Get lost. If you have any problems, our lawyer cousin will deal with you. Don't create problems for yourself." It was clear they weren't interested in talking or fixing the situation. After that exchange, things became a lot more serious. It wasn't just about the shed anymore, it was about how disrespectful and dismissive they were being. My parents are kind, reasonable people, but even they couldn't ignore the fact that the neighbors had built on their land without permission and now refused to acknowledge it. At this point, my family had no choice but to pursue the legal route. With the documentation I found and photos of the shed's location, we began compiling evidence. The neighbors had no idea that their threats to bring in their lawyer cousin would backfire. Fast forward to the resolution. After several rounds of back and forth through lawyers, the neighbors finally had to face the truth. The shed was on our property and they had no right to keep it there. Instead of their confident bluster, they now had to deal with reality. They were given 2 options: move the shed off our land or dismantle it entirely. In the end, they opted to move it. And even that came with a hefty price tag for them. I must admit, the entire ordeal left a bad taste. But that shed's no longer a problem, and the boundary between our homes is now crystal clear. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.